The journey of white supremacy in the U.S. The Charlottesville marchers have their roots deeply intertwined with the history and present of the nation. This marks the emergence of a new dimension of white supremacy in the United States, one that goes above and beyond the long-standing and ongoing systemic discrimination faced by minorities. White supremacists envision a world where minorities are subservient or non-existent. Let's delve into a brief historical background that sheds light on how the contemporary white supremacist movement came about. The origin and endurance of white supremacy during the formation of the nation. Slaves were regarded as 3/5 of a person according to Article 1 of the Constitution. Furthermore, according to Article 4, states were obliged to return escaped slaves. The United States was, in essence, built on the foundation of white supremacy. The Civil War abolished legal white supremacy. However, it persisted, enforced by Southern leaders and white extremist groups, most notably the Ku Klux Klan, KKK. Extralegal violence, including lynchings, was utilized to subjugate black individuals. With the resurgence of white supremacy in the South, the original Klan faded away. However, it was reborn in the early 20th century as a Protestant nativist movement. The revived KKK targeted not only black people but also Catholics and Jews. This continued a long-standing anti-immigrant tradition embraced by America. The second iteration of the KKK experienced a surge in popularity, garnering millions of supporters, but just as quickly diminished in the 1930s. The formation of the third iteration occurred during the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. Fueled by anger over desegregation attempts, whites, including local officials, donned white hoods and initiated violent attacks against civil rights activists. Both black and white individuals became victims of assaults, bombings, and assassinations. The enactment of the Civil Rights Act in 1964 and the Voting Rights Act in 1965 served as the culmination, legally dismantling segregation. Support for the KKK dwindled. White supremacy retreats underground. The legal defeat of segregation did not diminish white supremacist ambitions for dominance, it merely drove them underground. Angry white supremacists detached from the mainstream, fragmented into numerous covertly racist organizations. Many of these groups drew inspiration from the Nazis, adopting a novel form of white opposition. These movements expanded beyond the South, spreading their influence throughout the entire United States. Revolutionary leader Wesley Swift fueled this new wave of white opposition. A former Methodist who established a church in the 1940s, Swift espoused a gospel of white supremacy. His distorted variant of Christianity, named the Church of Jesus Christ Christian, declared that only white Europeans were chosen by God. He harbored a particularly strong animosity toward Jews, appropriating elements of Nazi anti-Semitism. One dedicated follower of Swift was William Potter Gale, a World War II veteran disheartened by the federal government's intervention in the civil rights movement. In response, Gale formed the United States Christian Posse Association, renamed Posse Comitatus, Latin for Force of the County. His argument revolved around the notion that the federal government had exceeded its lawful boundaries, upholding the belief that the government lacked the authority to deploy troops for protecting black students during integration efforts, lacked the right to levy income taxes, and lacked jurisdiction over the Federal Reserve. He insisted that it was an illegitimate entity. Consequently, he justified opposition to its directives and officials, even via violent means if necessary. This viewpoint gained traction within far-right groups, possibly explaining their recurrent clashes with federal and state authorities. Arielle D. Trump's extended record of rampant racism. Gale also exhibited intense anti-Semite